There. Morning, Ken.
All right, my clock just hit 10, so why don't we go ahead and start. If you hear any birds in the background, it's my bird clock going off. So let's pray. Dear Lord, as we finally are on the road to recovery from this pandemic, and I don't know what normalcy means, but at least we're heading in that direction. There go the birds. I can tell you that having been in the sanctuary this past Sunday, it really warms your heart and you really get touched in a special place to be back there again. I have to admit, I had a couple of tears in my eyes just to be back in that room and to see the people who were there. We were all social distanced properly and everything worked technologically wise, and Jerry's responsible for that group of people around him. But it's really wonderful to see people again, and it's great to know that we're on that road to being a congregation and a community face to face once again. So let's hope it continues, and Jerry will fill in all the spaces in terms of what will happen and when. And with that, Jerry, I'm going to let you take over.
Amen.
Amen. That was a great prayer. I'm going to let you take over. I love it. Nick, good. So it's
Morning,
greetings,
Dr.
everyone.
Young.
Is Gary on there? Yeah, mute. Okay, good. So I'd like to start out just with one of my favorite scripture readings because I think it really is applicable to this group and to our church staff. And so it's from Romans chapter 12, verses 3-8. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of yourself more highly than you ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as in one body, we have many members, and not all the members have the same function. So we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually we are members one of another. We have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, prophecy in proportion to faith, ministry in ministering, the teacher in teaching, the exhorter in exhortation, the giver in generosity, the leader in diligence, the compassionate in cheerfulness. It's amazing that came up on my scripture readings this morning, because I think it's so appropriate for this group that we haven't seen in person since late February of last year. Probably early March was your last time in the building, but I think it's a great reminder of how we all contribute to this church. And I look at our staff and what we've gone through with COVID, and I see the same thing: the diversity, the talent, that everybody has a role, and we all play it to the best of our abilities. And I think it's helped us survive and thrive. And I'll steal on a line from my friend Bill Wilson from the Center for Healthy Churches. And that's really what COVID has been, is to survive and find new ways to thrive. So real briefly, many of you know me, but for those who maybe don't know me, church administrator. This is my 8th year. I celebrated my 8th anniversary as the church administrator in February of this year. Admittedly, this past year has probably been the most challenging of those 8 years. I'm married. I have 4 wonderful children who are all grown and out of the house. They are all contributing to society. I have a daughter, Kate, who lives in Long Beach, California. She is works in a psych hospital, working with the autistic spectrum. She has been out there about 7 years now. Then I have a son, Dan, who lives in Coatesville, and he's engaged to be married. So hopefully in September, late August, September, they're going to have a wedding. Dan works for a company, American College of Financial Professionals. It's used to be in Bryn Mawr, if anybody knows that. And my son, Connor, is my youngest. He is working for Lincoln Financial and doing really well, lives in media. And my son, Mike, who has 3 children, lives in Raleigh, North Carolina, and is a recruiter. And so all of them are contributing to society. I'm grateful for that. My wife, Carol, and I are navigating the perils of COVID, which we experienced firsthand when she got it last May and had it for 7 weeks. She had a lot of long haul effects from it, unfortunately, and she had to stop working. She was a hospice nurse, and she's no longer able to work, at least in that field at this point. So as of now, she's semi-retired, but we'll see what happens. She's excited about the opportunity to hopefully go back to work a couple of days a week. So we're enjoying life in Kennett Square, and so let me just get into where we are, what I want to talk about today. I want to cover the COVID a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time on it because we're kind of getting through it now. The numbers are looking great. They've come down, and I'll just share you my perspective and the task force and how we've operated from the beginning with this. So last March, obviously when COVID hit, the staff went into hiding. We all were working from home. I was coming in because you still have to meet with vendors, and you still have issues you have to deal with. And so I was doing that. Eventually, as the numbers dropped during the summer, we started back into staggered shifts for the employees. And basically, it was a tough time because I hired an administrative assistant, and she started 1 week before the shutdown. So her name's Stacy Wong. Many of you may not have even met her yet. And Stacy works with Barb in the office. And for the first 6 months of her employment, she worked from home, like many of us did. We applied for a PPP loan, as many of you know, which was the opportunity from the government to apply for funds that would based on your payroll, and as long as you retained employees, that loan became forgivable. So we had a loan of a little under 300,000 we received. We applied about 70 of that to the preschool, another 20 or so maybe to the thrift shop, and the balance was for the church. And I'm happy to say that all of that was forgiven at the end of the year, thanks to Donna Harrison, who did a great job in getting that loan for us and following through on the forgiveness. So the blessing of COVID is that we were able to put that money, 217,000 for the church side, directly into an operating reserve, added to our operating reserve, which has given us a very healthy operating reserve as we started the new year. We essentially went into digital mode, as all of you know, and something that I had not really been very comfortable with in the past. I really had never learned the soundboard or the cameras. I knew about them. I knew what worked and what didn't when I watched a broadcast, but it forced me out of my comfort zone. And so now this is really, it's what we do Sundays and other times when Lynn needs me. And I just want to put in a word of incredible grateful thanks to Lynn George, another member of our staff who has been just the most valuable employee on this team during COVID. And many of you know Lynn and know what a great resource she is, but she has directed, produced, you name it, everything that's been happening that you watch on the stream. And we have we are the better for it. Our production is so much heads and tails above where we were a year ago, even. We are grateful to a member who contributed so much of the dollars to allow us to stream and bring in the equipment that we brought in. And right now, that's been the key thing that we have done for the past year, has been giving you a broadcast that is worthy and of Westminster, and yet you're still able to hear the message and feel that spirituality. Unfortunately, never in person until this past week. So, we're excited. The task force from day one has been cautious. Some would say maybe too conservative, but if you know Don, our head of staff, Don Lincoln, Don has always believed that you have to shepherd your flock. You don't harm your flock. You love your neighbor. And that has been our position from day one, that we did not want to have people coming into the building, infecting staff members or infecting other members. God forbid that we would have to bury many of our members who have passed from COVID. If you talk to Don, he will tell you one of his pastors, I believe, had 18 people that they had to bury last year because of COVID. So that has been the mantra of the task force, is to be cautious and careful. And recently we decided it was time. The numbers at that point were not quite where we would have liked them, but we are feeling the the tiredness of being away from church, and hearing it from some of our members who wanted to get back into the building. So the decision was made that we would open the first week in May. We would have the first Sunday would be just officers, leaders, deacons, elders, trustees, ushers. And then this week coming, it'll be opened up to the congregation. We're still going to have social distancing. We think we can get maybe 100 in the sanctuary. And some of that depends on if families come, because they can all sit together. We have a plan that if we do have a lot of people register, that we would open up Spellman Hall for overflow. And so that's where we are at this point in time. I think everything's now on, you can go on to Realm and register. To do that, you just go onto the webpage and look for the link and sign up. We will continue that for the foreseeable future. I hope that we don't have to do that as we get into the late summer months. I'm hoping that things by then will be much safer. And at that point in time, we hope to be back to normal and have a cafe going in September. It would be awesome to see people back and socializing after worship. Small groups, we're now allowing back in the building. So that started last week, actually. The challenge we have right now, guys and ladies, is that we are struggling with a hybrid approach. So there are some of you that say, listen, I want to come back to church. But there's a lot of you that will say, I'm not comfortable yet. I want to participate via Zoom. So we are looking at an investment at the moment. We're waiting on an approval for it, but we are looking to create Zoom rooms, which it's technology that's not that old. We're the first church, according to the company we work with, that has looking to do this, and it's a big investment, but it would allow a group to be in the building and be in a room and have several people on Zoom. And yet for those people be on Zoom, they would be able to see the person talking, presenting. They could see the presentation if there were slides, and they could also hear very clearly questions or comments from the in-person audience. And so we're going to be investing in Spelman Junior and the choir room. They will be the two rooms we invest in to do that. We are then going to create and have smart TVs in 405, 406. So that'll offer us basically, great technology all throughout that building. And that's really the best thing we have. Right now, we have something called the owl. It looks like an owl, the bird. And it's a microphone, and it does basically the same thing, but more limited basis. And you can put that in Spelman Junior, and you can have the person talking, and then the owl turns and the camera focuses on that person, so that anybody on Zoom can hear and see who it is talking. So that's something we have in place right now, but the technology we're investing in will allow us to have a much more robust platform. So that's where we are with small groups. And Barb Drain is taking calls and setting up, meetings, and small group circles are now scheduling and what have you. So that's really where we are with COVID. I didn't want to spend much more time on that unless you had any questions. And I encourage you, if you want to ask a question during this, raise your hand rather than waiting. So, but I wanted to get into some of the things we're doing around the building as we get ready to officially open, and what we've been doing this past year. So during COVID in 2020, we significantly cut back our property budget. We had a budgeted 100 and some odd thousand. You all know we have a property reserve. Many of you know we have a property reserve, which has been funded since probably the early 2000s. A property reserve is really money that's allocated from the operating budget every year to build up a property reserve for improvements around the building, capital improvements. And it's something that got up to as high as $500,000 at one point, has been drawn down because, as many of you know, when you're in a house for 20 some years, things start to break and you start to need to replace the infrastructure. So in 2016, it started where we were looking at significant improvements and enhancements that we'd have to make. So thank God for the property reserve, for givers like all of you that have helped to fund that, to keep the facility fresh. And then the best part is we are now looking at all of our enhancements that would be maintenance free, that would last 30 to 40 years. As you all know, when this place was built, it was built with a lot of wood, and wood rots over time. Looks nice, but it wasn't as practical from a standpoint of longevity when it was built. Maybe nobody thought about where 25, 30 years from now we'd be. So in 2020, we significantly cut back on what we were going to do. We added windows at the end of the year on the office side. So our property committee has focused on individual wings. We started in the courtyard in 2016. We moved to paint the sanctuary and do a number of enhancements in there. The following year, we moved to Spelman Hall to do a lot of work in Spelman Wing. And then last year was the admin wing. And then this year, we were looking at the education wing. So a lot of what we've done this year has been focused on that area of the building. So just to give you some examples of some of the things we're doing, we budgeted $202,000. And I just want to share something here. So let me share the screen if I can and pull up. There we go. So can you all see this okay?
Yes.
This is
Yes.
this is our property reserve. We do a 3 to 5 year plan every year with property. And you'll see on the left hand, the very left hand side, you'll see the areas that we focus on. And so then the column after that is our plan for 2021. And the plan for 2021 was 202,000 if you go all the way to the bottom. Because we only spent 30,000 last year, we had to budget more because we deferred a lot into 2021. So if you scroll back up, you'll see some of those budgeted expenditures. We have a landscaping allowance that's a placeholder for us. We actually are going to be doing this week, if the weather cooperates, a whole new planning design along the north wall and the stone wall as you come in and around the front entrance. So that's going to be done. And it's going to look great when it matures in a couple of years. But that's one of the major things we're doing. And we're actually going to fund that from the budget. Thank God we can do that. Painting, we have spent a good amount of time painting in the past year. This year, we hired a company to come in. And have any of you seen the pictures from the Facebook on the stairwell back in Heckert, where which goes down to the preschool?
Yeah.
So yep, Ted saw them.
Looks great. I like it.
It's amazing. We hired we didn't hire, but we reached out to a consultant with Sherwin-Williams, and they don't come to the church anymore because of COVID. So everything was virtual. So I sent her pictures of all the spaces, and then she FaceTimed us on a call and selected those colors. And that it is just amazing how eye-popping that is. So when you come in, you'll notice that it's just an incredible. It looks fabulous every time I go back. I can't imagine. I can't look at it and like, wow, this is so great. We have painted the entire Heckert wing. We put in all new lighting in the hallway. George, our custodian and handyman, has been a great resource for us this past year. He has been painting up a storm. He has done the cove. He's done all the classrooms. He's done the hallways, and then we hired the company to do the stairwell, the coffee area, which looks fabulous, and 413. They painted that as well. So we have basically finished the Heckert upstairs. George has also been painting on the admin side. So he painted Bob and Glenn's office. He's going to be painting the choir room, which hasn't ever been done, I don't think. He's going to be he's painting currently the men's room on the office side, and we'll go to the ladies' room next. And so he's been an incredible resource for us. He will eventually get to the library. We haven't really painted the library, and we'll be in a position to do that too. So a lot of good things happening with that. You scroll down a little further, we are investing a significant amount of money in the education wing for the windows. So as you can see, there's a budget there of if you can read that, 65,000 for doors and windows in Heckert and the preschool. And actually, we're going to be spending almost 65,000 as it turns out. It's a big investment. There's 40 windows that have to be replaced. There's a lot of labor because it's 2 levels. We are replacing some doors, exterior doors down in the preschool as well. So it is a big investment that we are making there, and that is hopefully going to happen sometime this summer. We also are replacing a 2 sets of doors on the admin hallway out to the courtyard. We're putting in new doors there. So those are big investments for us. One of the things you really don't see on here, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, is as many of you know, our HVAC system, which heats and cools our building, has been a problem area for us. We have struggled with it because of the way it was constructed. Everything's in the ceiling. And we have a lot of issues when you have pipes above the ceiling running cold water or hot water. What happens? Pipes, valves corrode, you start getting leaks, and you have to replace things. And it has been a very difficult process for us that we've gone through, and we spent a lot of money. So we, property committee, we decided this year that we can no longer just continue to, replace things as they break, because it's becoming more and more of a problem. So we made a bold move in the past month. I had somebody reach out to me, a local company, about providing ion air cleaning devices for the church. And this person's a mechanical engineer, has been an engineer for 40 years. I brought him in. I was so impressed with him. And one of the things he does is he's a consultant and does evaluations of your HVAC system and makes recommendations for enhancement. So we hired him. We hired him to do an evaluation of our entire HVAC system. This is radical for us because, we're working with our HVAC contractor, but they don't really have that capability. They could do it, but they're too busy fixing things. So we hired this gentleman, Bob McGreevy is his name, a wonderful man, a faith-filled man, and happens to live across the street from the church, believe it or not. And so he's coming in and we're looking to get an evaluation done by him. So that's going to be important for us. We are going to invest in these ion air cleaning devices. Dave would know what I'm talking about there. And we're going to start in the Heckard wing and put them all in the preschool and upstairs. Then we're going to move to the sanctuary and gradually, hopefully, to the fellowship wing as well. But we're excited about what this gentleman's going to come back with. He's also looking to improve our energy efficiency. We have a lot of challenges there with one major thing in particularly right now, and that's where I'm arm wrestling a system every day because our chiller, we're having hot water bleed into our cold water. So when it goes back into the chiller and sits overnight, it's 120 degrees. And when you call for days like, the couple days we've had where it went into the 80s and it calls for cold air, and the water is 120. So it takes probably an hour and a half to get the cold air you're looking for. So that you can well imagine that's not energy efficiency. And so that's one of our main challenges right now and what Bob and his team are going to be looking at. So that's a big part of our investment. The other things we're looking to do, the main thing has been signage. We are going to, hopefully next time you come to church, you're going to see all new directional signage outside. Something we really haven't invested in many years. And it's going to be something that drove me crazy every time somebody comes to visit us that comes for an appointment, and I got to give them detailed instructions on how to find us. So the directional signage will be a major help for us. And that's going to happen sometime in the next 3 weeks. I'm hoping to have that installed. And we have some other plans with signage. We are also going to be replacing our 202 sign. Finally, after 28 years, we have a donor for that who's going to fund most of that. The township now allows digital signage. So we are hopefully going to be putting in a digital sign sometime in the next 12 months. So those are some of the areas that we are looking to enhance the church to really make it look great when everybody comes back. And I'll stop there before I get into the final part of my presentation, to just ask anybody have questions on what I've said, because I've done all the talking.
If you have a question, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Barry, I have a question.
Sure.
The preschool board, and many of us are very concerned about the replacement windows that have been put down there because they don't open. And, we're considering that fact alone is a health and safety matter. The preschool children have no chance of getting fresh air. And in an emergency, they're not going to be able to get out the windows unless the windows are broken. So can you comment on that, please?
It's good timing on your question, Nancy. I met with Jackie yesterday on that. And I've reached out to one of the board members to discuss, because there was some miscommunication along the way as to what was going on and what was the purpose of wanting casement windows. The preschool has had casement windows, as did all of the Heckard wing. We had decided as a property committee to look into casement windows again for the preschool. The problem we had is the cost. It's $600 more a window. It probably would add for the preschool portion of over 20,000 more than what we had already budgeted. The feeling was, what was the issue? Was it safety or health? And I clarified that yesterday with Jackie, that it's more about the health and getting fresh air for the kids. Casement windows wouldn't help kids escape. Okay, if you're going to do it, you're going to break the windows if there's an active shooter that comes in the building. If God forbid that would ever happen. But what we're doing is the ion air cleaning devices would cure that. You wouldn't have to worry about bringing fresh air from outside into the building. There's actually an enhancement in our energy efficiency by investing in these devices. And that's something, when we do that, and hopefully they'll be in place before the new school year starts, that will make a huge difference for the fresh air and clean air that the kids will be inhaling, teachers as well. So that will basically help everything. But I felt like I needed to talk to the one board member in particular who has had concerns about that. And so I followed up with them, and hopefully we'll have a good conversation. And then going forward, how do we better work with the preschool on some of these big enhancements that are to be made?
Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome, Nance. Other questions?
Jerry, I have a question. I don't know what's going on with Cridbilly Farm and the development of that area, but I do have some experience with earth movement. And to give you an immediate example, when I lived in Upper Chichester, I don't know if you know where the Hilltop School is. There's a community that was built there, and the Hilltop School is built on an old Nike missile base, believe it or not. And they filled in that missile base, with landfill and all that stuff. And today, because of all the earth movement in that area, it's caused a lot of damage to the homes in terms of stress fractures throughout the homes, water damage, a whole bunch of things. So one thing I'd encourage you to keep an eye on is if Cridbilly Farm gets developed, and depending, of course, what gets put there, it could cause a lot of earth movement at the church. And you could end up with some of those same problems that we had in that Upper Chichester community. So it's just something I'm putting on your radar to think about long term, that depending on how Cridbilly Farm gets developed and how they rearrange the landscaping and all that sort of stuff, it could have a physical impact on the church. And it's something I think you want to get out in front of in terms of how that whole area gets developed.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I mean, the Cridbilly Farm development, I sit on the land development group that's looking at the 8.5 acres that we own, and what do we potentially want to do with that acreage. And we've been talking to developers for affordable housing, having meetings with them, and really the elephant in the room is always what happens with Cridbilly. A craybilly will, according to my friend Ed McFalls, that will likely get developed at some point by Toll, but it's probably going to be built after I'm gone even. So,
Yeah, well,
but good point, Nick. And then, how do we utilize those the acreage that we own right now, that's right now zoned agricultural. So we have our farmer, and he grows his soybeans and wheat and whatever else he's growing there every year, and sometimes sunflowers that don't make it to maturity because of deer. So, but yes, thanks for bringing that up. I didn't know that story.
and also, like you're pointing out, zoning changes can be difficult
Yes.
and they take time and it's very political. And so it's another thing you have to keep an eye on is how the zoning changes for that area.
Yeah, and dealing with Westtown is not easy. We have struggled with them with just getting digital signage. They finally got the code passed to allow that, and that took God knows how many years since I've been here. I've been trying to get something done like that, and it's great to see that it is now in place, and we can move forward with a sign that is more reflective of who we are as a church. One quick note, I'd have to mention it. Many of you know that we have had some retirement announcements among the staff. As you know, we had one point had 10 people over 60 years of age on the staff. And the big issue for us was succession planning. How do we do this in an orderly way that doesn't disrupt the congregation? So Sue Spot stepped down at the end of the year. That was her choice. Bob and Glenn were going to retire last year before COVID hit. That's now been rescinded for now. Don, of course, announced his retirement, which he'll be here until we have a new pastor, which is great because you don't lose that disruption with an interim pastor. Donna Harrison just announced, as many of you know, probably Donna is our treasurer, and she has announced her retirement. She wants to move back to South Carolina to be with her parents, as she's the only sibling left, and she felt strongly about being closer to them. So I'm in the process of doing a search for a new finance person. So that's been one of our big challenges, and will continue to be a challenge for us. How do we do this in a way that is orderly and doesn't impact the chemistry of the staff? Because right now we have a great chemistry among this group of pastors and folks on report to me. So I just wanted to pass that on and mention it. The big thing I wanted to cover was the other big thing I wanted to cover was our memorial garden. So last year, when COVID hit, we were just beginning an expansion of the memorial garden. And it was a significant challenge because we had a certain plan in place, but when you're doing this and you don't have technically all of the funding you need to do this enhancement, you have to sell and do advanced sales and spend a lot of time trying to raise funds to cover the expansion. So the Memorial Garden has always had an in-ground garden, which can have cremains, right? And that was that plot of grass in the center. If everybody knows where the Memorial Garden is, it's on the east, outside the sanctuary on the east side at the offices, the office entrance. And that was what we had. But unfortunately, in 2017-18, we ran out of space. We had no more space that we could, provide someone. And so we started looking at how are we going to expand this garden? And initially we looked at a design that would triple the in-ground garden space. But as we all know, land is limited. What do we do with it at that point when the land runs out? And we were looking at some above ground options at that point in time, and we got intrigued by one in particular, which was a company out of Minnesota, ICOF, Columbaria, and they are brilliant. They're brilliant at this. Don and I talked to several companies, and we were just not getting anything that looked warm and inviting. The options were kind of cold looking. And so we ended up talking to ICOF and decided on something called an ossuarium. An ossuarium, of course, is, I'll explain that in a minute, and hopefully Ted will help me when he shares the screen as to what that is. But we decided to invest in an above ground burial place where you could have a place to put your ashes and have your name, have your own little space on that. Many of you know that in the memorial garden, in ground garden, you don't know where your loved one is. I mean, you may remember when you buried them, but where? I mean, years later, I'm not sure where my wife or my husband is, or my son or my daughter. It's because there's no way of identifying that. And this allows you to have your own personalized, what we call a niche, in the above ground. So to do that required finding ways to fund it, which we were blessed. We had gotten a gift of some money from a member. And we also decided to do some pre-sales. So I basically, that's what I spent my year doing in 2020, was selling space in the new ossuarium and raising funds to pay for the expansion. And we did. We did our part. We sold enough to pay completely for the expansion. We have a balance probably of about 26,000 in the Memorial Garden Fund right now. We are going to be looking to do another promotion of the ossuarium. It's very hard to sell a space in something when you're not at the church. And so that has been the challenge. One of the other things we did was we decided to put a prayer labyrinth in the garden itself, and it's a beautiful space. It's going to be beautiful when the planting matures a little bit more. We ended up bringing one of our guys who was on the committee, Ken LaRosa. Nick knows Ken; he's one of our brothers, and Ken ended up doing the work himself to save the church money. And at this point in time, we are about 95% complete. We still have to place the plaques, the 2 plaques from the in-ground garden that were there, and we need to put them in their new place. So that'll be done hopefully in the next 2 months or so. And so that's where we are with the ossuarium. So I wanted to share with you just what is an ossuarium, because I've gotten so many questions about what is this structure. And so Ted, if you would be kind enough to share the screen, and we will bring it up. If you click on that ossuarium link there, and then we can go.
Is it on the screen?
It's on the screen, and that's what an ossuarium looks like. So let me just tell you a little bit about it. The one we purchased looks kind of similar to this, not quite, but it is. You can see there it has a dark band on one of the rows, and then you can see, if you look at it, there are little squares, right? Little spaces in there that those are niches or niches. And that's what I was talking about. So a columbarium would basically have no band, no dark band around it. It would just have a lot of niches around. and everybody purchases a niche, and it fits 2 urns. Okay. And you would get your name. You would get the date of birth, month, day, year, and date of death on there. And that would be your niche. So your loved ones could come and visit that space. And we thought it made a lot of sense. The difference with an ossuarium is an ossuarium has this band. It's a darker band. I wish I had a picture to show you of the one that we had, but I couldn't. For some reason, my pictures aren't downloading this morning. And there's a dark band, second row down. And what that means is the difference with an ossuarium is that you have a columbarium that has niches, but then there's something called an ossuary vault. An ossuary vault goes back to biblical times, where they found James's bones basically in an ossuary vault. And so what happens is if somebody wants to purchase a niche or purchase space in an ossuary, they could do it very cheaply. It's probably the lowest cost option we have with the ossuarium. And they spend $500 and they get a space in the center of that ossuarium, inside center. So there's a little access place, and it's a satin urn, and the urn gets distributed into the center of the ossuarium. And you can hold probably 185 bags or cremains in that center, in addition to having all of the exterior niches for your loved one, for people that choose to want to have their own niche. And the band allows you to, for those who are decide to do the lower cost option, is to have their name on the band, their year of birth and year of death. And that's what happens with an ossuarium. So Don and I decided we felt like that made the most sense, that we could then offer to people that maybe don't have the means to afford a niche, that they could then invest or spend their money on $500 for an ossuary space, and then pay for the urn and pay for the inscription. So that we felt was a good idea to do that. In retrospect, I'm not sure. Time will tell. We've had only one person that has opted to purchase space in the ossuary. Most everybody else, we've sold 25 niches to date. Most people want their own niche. But we hope and pray that at some point when the church opens back up, that we will get back to having this space. People will look at it, people will be interested in it. So we're excited about that, and that will allow us to continue to grow the fund. We've had a couple of people that reserve space in the ground who have requested to be upgraded to the ossuarium. And so we have allowed that, and I'll be sending out letters to people that have reserved space in the ground, that if they want to upgrade to the ossuarium, they can, and just pay the net difference of what it would cost. So that's really what I had today to cover, and I wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions and what have you. So,
Is the Memorial Garden reserved for Westminster members only?
That's a great question, Nance. At this point, it was really for members or staff, people that have been on staff, but we've entertained for like former members. If a daughter has come to us and said, well, my mom used to be a member, I'd like to be able to purchase space. We will, as a committee, we will definitely strongly consider that. But at this point, it was made mainly for members. And I would like it to be, if people are attending our church, but they just don't want to be an official member, because some people don't like to be members. I mean, that's people, I don't like to be a member. I just like the church. Then we would strongly consider allowing that. Dan, my friend, how are you, man?
I made it. Good. Listen, this isn't a very spiritual question, but you may have mentioned this. I'm curious. Um, this whole year has had an impact, the finances of people, money coming in. And even if you want to spend money, you can even spend money in a lot of cases. I'm interested. I don't know what you want to use to, but from a net worth point of view for the church. What was our situation a year plus ago versus now? What's the impact been on the finances of the church?
Okay. So great question, Dan. I'm going to pull up that financials here for a second. I'm going to show you the end of March. Better yet, let me pull up. Well, let me pull up March at least through March. Okay. If you can all see that in front of you, can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks good.
So this is the first 3 months of the new year. Okay. Just to back up a little bit before I get into it, when we did the budget for 2021, we had a challenge because we had no revenues coming from the preschool. The preschool could generate as much as 70 to 80,000 a year in a normal year for us. But with the preschool shut down from COVID until really this past March, there was no funds coming in from the preschool. You take that and you add the 40,000 that we budget every year for cash and plate, and that's people who come on a Sunday that maybe don't pledge, but will throw money into the plate as it's passed. We didn't have much of that of anything, as you can well imagine, after COVID hit. So we ended up looking at a deficit of about 7% in our budget. We had a decline of 7% in our budget. We had a small drop in giving, but the majority of it is the other revenue that supports us. Facility use. It's only 12,000 that we budget every year, but we haven't had anything in facility uses. We are not renting to outside groups. So we entered the year at somewhat of a disadvantage. But what we're looking at has been, hold on guys, people keep calling me. I keep having to hang up on them. So what we see here is this is through 3 months. Okay, you have the actual current period right here. And that's what we did in March, offering of 228,000. The budget was 183. Okay, so we are well above it. You go further across, year to date, we're at almost 700,000 in actual. This is the offering. This is pledge giving and identified people who do not pledge. And hold on. Man, crazy morning. And you look at where we are versus budget. We're about 85,000 above plan right now through the first 3 months. A lot of that, Dan, has to do with people that run in their pledge through qualified charitable distributions. We do get a lot of that at the beginning of the year. But Donna Harrison has been so ecstatic at what she has seen. She tells me that April will look just as good, believe it or not. The one positive is we're not really spending money. So, this 12,000 in general revenue here that we show, which is a big number, had to do with a matching contribution from corporation that for some reason they didn't get around to doing it till a year later. And we got it in a lump sum. So that's why that number is so high. But if you go to the bottom of the page, you look here, in March alone, we had a net profit of 70,000 versus a budgeted deficit of 2,500. And year to date, we're at 226,000 net profit. I hate to say profit, but net swing of funds above a budget of only 86,000. And if we go over further, you'll see last year, if I can go over to the end here, actually where we were last year, we were 134,000 at the end of 3 months. And that was really when COVID began. So we are very healthy, in a very healthy position. If I go back up further here, I'll show you our operating reserve. So let me make this a little bigger. So this is our operating reserve right here, this line. You can see the number here is $341,000. And about 217 of that was the PPP loan that was forgiven. So even if you back that out, we had $124,000 in an operating reserve, something we started several years ago. And this past month, you'll see that we took 100,000 out of that operating reserve in March. And the decision was made because the preschool had suffered so much, had many of their reserves were depleted with the church, with the preschool closed, and the same with the thrift shop that just had so many issues with floods and, you know, to add to the COVID misery. So the decision was made to recommend moving 100,000 of the operating reserve to give 80 to the preschool and 20 to the thrift shop. So that's the blessing of our operating reserve and the PPP loan. I'm really glad we did it. Some churches chose not to do it. And I believe
That was the
that
federal
was a
government
mistake.
one. There's something.
So Dan, I could go and show you year end, but I think that gives you really a good perspective on the health of where we are as a church. And did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's all online giving basically then, huh?
It's all online giving. And let me just further go down and show you that for a second. There's a page that Donna does at the very end of her report. And this is it here. So you'll see here, and this is a lot of numbers on this page, so I don't want to overwhelm everybody, but Donna tracks online giving. She tracks what people give through Realm, because you can go on Realm and to your own page. I don't know if you know that, but you can go on Realm to your profile and you can give right there on Realm. Bank checks are still a big part of it, and there are checks that come in from banks. So you say, PNC, I want you to pay the church every month, and that's what happens. So she gets checks from banks. These are the IRA, the qualified charitable distribution you see here. So she tracks that. Charitable gift trust that our people would give us through trust that they created, stock donations. So there are a number of ways that we're getting this, which has been, it's accelerated our online presence, really. We're about 1/3 probably of online giving, probably could afford to be a lot higher than that. We have text giving. So there are a number of ways. You see that slide every Sunday during the worship. And I wanted to show you this. That's the number I showed you back in March. This is the breakdown of it. So you can see here, 200,000 of it was pledge giving. And then there's another number called non-pledge giving. And these are people we identify who aren't pledgers, and some of them can't. Maybe they have job uncertainty, whatever. So they still give, they just don't want to be pledgers. And that's what that number is there. And that comes up to 220. And you can see how that applies across. So we've been very lucky and blessed that the church has thrived during this period of time, and hopefully will allow us as we go forward to continue to thrive. So that kind of ends my piece on, and wanted to find out if anybody had any additional questions.
Yes, you will have a question.
Jerry, I got a question about the ossuary. So you were saying if you're willing to be in the dark band, I guess you're in a bag or whatever, and it's kind of communal, it's $500. What is it to be in a niche? I don't think I heard you say a price.
Yeah, the niches range from the very top row, when we looked at this, ICOF was great in consulting us on how you price these. And everybody wants the heart and the eye level. That's what the most demand is for. So the top row for 2 people total is 2,800 to reserve a niche. There's a cost of inscription, obviously, which is 200 per individual. And then the cost of the urns, if you purchase them through ICOF, they're relatively inexpensive. I think it's $75 for an urn. The
So basically,
robe,
for you being buried as an individual, you're talking about somewhere in $1,600, something like that.
yeah, it's 1,500 actually for a single niche. We don't have single niches, but the committee decided to allocate the bottom 2 rows to folks who wanted to purchase just a single niche. They're all double niches, but we also recognize there were folks that, that don't have a significant other and they just want to have a resting place. And so we've had several people opt to go into a single niche on those bottom 2 rows. And I think we're charging 1,500 for that. It's 2,800. Then we dropped to 2,500 in the heart level row below the band. And then I believe it's 2,100 and 1,700 for the bottom row. So, it's a good deal. If you go out and you look at what you spend at Catholic cemeteries, at cemeteries in general, and other churches, it's significantly higher to purchase niches. We've tried to keep the price, and we priced it based on what we spent for this ossuarium. So, it's going to continue to fund our memorial garden. We have to pay somebody when they come in and open the ground up and close it. We're not doing that with custodians any longer. So we pay somebody to do it professionally. There are a lot of things. We have to pay for landscaping needs. We have to pay for ribbons on the bronze plaques. So there are a lot of areas that we will have to, continue to pay out of maintenance. And so the Memorial Garden Fund hopefully will continue to grow into the future and be a good source of revenue for the church.
What are cremations costing these days? Do you know? To be cremated by the funeral home, I'm not sure what the cost is of that right now. I just know that it is a much more efficient way and from an environmental standpoint as well, it's a much more efficient way to handle your burial plans.
Can I butt in a little bit?
Sure, man.
Jerry, my sister died of COVID and we had her cremated and it cost us, not for the service, just for the cremation, it cost us $2,000.
Okay.
Okay, this was at a funeral home in Montgomery County.
Okay. Thanks, Ann. That's helpful.
You're welcome.
Yes, Reverend Bell.
I just give a shout out for ICOF. I think I had expressed this to you, Jerry. The Corning Church, where I served for 19 years, they created a memorial garden in 2004. ICOF did the work. Very pleased with them. As you have outlined it here, it covers its own cost and is a great option. It's akin to the old cemeteries that churches used to have, and we don't do that anymore. And this is a good alternative.
Yeah, thanks, Bob, for pointing that out. Yeah, Bob had reached out to me early on and told me and shared that with me. And, we have been just so impressed with this company, the way they do things. I mean, if I need to, we had our second cremation service on Sunday. So we have 2 people in there that are in the ossuarium in niches at the moment. And we have to send a faceplate out. So we have to take off the faceplate and we put it in a specialized box. We ship it to ICOF and they turn around and get it back to us within 5 days. And it's very beautiful, the way it's inscribed. It's been a very seamless process. Their support is amazing. They've been doing this for close to 40 years, and they're number one, heads and shoulders, in my opinion, above anybody else we've ever looked at. So we're excited about working with them. And when we put it in last year, many people don't realize this, but you have to put footers in the ground for the foundation. And we had 2 of those done. So we put in footers for a second one, so we wouldn't have to spend the money to bring cement in and pour cement, that when we're ready to do a second one, whenever that may be, 5-10 years down the road, that we will be able to, so it'll be able to support a second one. The expansion of the in-ground gave us an additional 122 spaces in the ground for people that want to be in the ground. And we still have people wanting to do that. So it's been a good experience overall. And hopefully we'll continue to grow, as Bob pointed out. The fund will continue to grow to support all of that.
Hey,
Yeah, Gene,
What's the capacity of?
capacity,
of-
okay.
And capacity utilization, I guess, is a term by the end of the year or whatever.
Right. The Dan, the capacity for the ossuarium is for the niches. There are 96 double niches, so potentially 192 people in there. But we have allocated some space, as I mentioned, for single niches. Then you have another 185 potential that could go into the ossuary vault. So it's a significant number. In the Memorial Garden, we had 230 spaces in the original garden. There is some of that still available because people have upgraded to the ossuarium. And then we added 120.
Did he answer the question?
So that has given us a lot more space available for us.
That's good. And how else do you say it?
Craig, did you have a question?
Yeah, what does it cost to upgrade to the, to get a niche? I mean, my wife and I put in $500 each
Right.
for this.
So essentially what you would do then, Craig, and I'll send something out to you, but essentially we would use the $500 for each of you as a credit. And let's say you wanted to go in the top row. You would spend 2,800 minus 500. Well, 1,400 minus 500 for you and 1,400 minus 500. So you'd spend 1,800 to go into a top row, for instance, and that number drops further depending on what row you go into. You wouldn't have to worry, you'd have your inscription cost and your urn that you would purchase. But I can send you more details on that. It's just, we're basically taking whatever you spend in the Memorial Garden to reserve space. We're giving you that as a credit.
Want to be on the top row. Somebody has to be first trumpet.
I didn't hear the question. Could you repeat it?
It wasn't a question, it was a comment.
Oh, I didn't catch it. Okay.
Jerry, one other important question. As you know, you and I are in a group called the Gathering of Men on Wednesday nights. And we're all chomping at the bit to get back into a live situation, although some might still choose to be on Zoom. Do you have any realistic idea when we might be able to do that again?
Yeah, we've actually had conversations. Ed and I, Kane and I have had conversations with Lynn about that. Lynn wants to do a training on the OWL, that OWL microphone I told you about. She wants to have give us a training session on that so that we could come on a Wednesday night and set it up, and people that wanted to participate via Zoom could do that. So I'm hoping, Nick, in the next couple of weeks, maybe next 2 or 3 weeks,
Great,
we could be there.
great.
Jerry, I had a question. It's
Hi,
Barb
Barb.
Boyd.
Hi, Barb.
In regards to the oscillarium, when is the urn or the bag purchase, do you wait until the person dies or do you purchase ahead of time?
Well, I'm trying to remember, because I know we had several, what we offered, we had a special we offered during the promotion of pre-sale. I currently have about 40 urns sitting in my office that have been purchased. I think we threw in the urns as part of the promotion for in the first part of the pre-sale. So you can purchase that now or wait until later. It's not necessary, but if you want to purchase the urn now, it's always recommended because that price is only going to go up going forward. So there are some of you on this screen that have purchased space in the ossuarium and did get an urn thrown in as part of the deal, and I have it in my office. So at some point when you come back into the church, you can get an urn to take back with you. So, you know, either now or later, it doesn't matter, Barb.
Okay.
Other questions? I know we ran over the time, but that's okay. I hope it was.
The interest level was great, Jerry, and I deeply appreciate you taking the time out. So I know how busy you are to meet with us, and you really did give us a tremendous amount of information. Some very practical in terms of what costs are, where we want to put our remains, to future planning in terms of vision for the church. So I can't thank you enough. And, you know, you and I have been friends for a long time. And I got to say, you're a spectacular speaker and presenter, and I really appreciate you taking it.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, Nick. Thank you. I always enjoy getting a chance to do this. I don't do it as much as I used to. And I apologize. I had hoped to put a presentation together, and it's tough to do when you're incorporating so many pieces. And I just felt it best to go over and highlight some things, but I hope it was helpful. And again, thank you, all of you, for what you do, and can't wait to see many of you back in the church.
Okay.
Good talk. I'll
Thank
bring
you,
my
Jerry.
own urn.
All right, Dan, sounds good.
His own coffee can.
As long as it fits the dimensions. And I'm happy to, if anybody has any questions after the meeting about the ossuarium, I mean, I'm happy to send you information on it, including the fee schedules and things like that, rules and regs. But, you know, just reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk about it. And it's a passion of mine. So anyway, thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Good job.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.